Okay, so now we're done with chapter 4. So I just wanted to do a brief overview of chapter 5. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, talk about this thing called the integral. And what the integral studies is area, which is a little different than what before we were studying the derivative, or the slope of the tangent line. Now it's going to take us a little bit to talk about this integral from the perspective that we're going to talk about, which, if you remember, when we first started talking about derivative, we used an idea of a limit, and we had our limit definition of the derivative. Similarly, we're going to have a limit definition of the integral, and I'll need you to just stick with me for a bit with that, because if you remember, limit definition of derivative wasn't particularly fun to use. Same with limit definition of the integral. But after we talk about that, once we get to section 5.3, there's going to be a surprising connection we have between them. Because if you look, one's talking about area, one's talking about slope. Doesn't look like you would have anything between them, but there will be some connection between them that will let us talk about integrals not from a limit definition point of view, but from here's the integral of some function, compute this thing, you don't have to use limit definition, and there's just fancy rules to get out your area, which is a number. And because they are related, you also get other rules that we're going to talk about later. Like there's a rule, for example, in section, I believe it's 5.5, that is analogous to, say, chain rule, something called U substitution. And besides the relation between this, that's the other big concept that we'll see in this chapter, is U substitution. Because similar to how chain rule expanded what we could take the derivative of, U substitution will, in essence, expand what we can take the integral of. Now, a little caveat is the integral, as it's later in the semester, as you could guess, we're probably not going to talk about much about the integral. We're going to spend most of the rest of the semester on it. But at the same time, a lot of the methods for doing the integral will actually not come in this class. If you take Calc 2, that's where you'll talk about these other methods, like trig substitution and stuff like that, and integration by parts. And we'll also talk a little bit in this chapter also more about word problems too, and how do integrals really play into with these word problems. How do integrals and this idea of area help us to solve these certain situations? And those word problems will come as early as section 5.1. Okay, so I will see you all virtually.